What if the biggest secret hidden inside an old house wasn't treasure, but one letter that had the power to heal two broken families decades apart? Before we continue, here's a small request. If you're enjoying this story, please like, follow, and subscribe to stay connected and never miss a new story. Episode 1: The Forgotten Letter. The Carter family had spent years living in a fast-moving city where everyone was busy chasing deadlines. Ethan Carter accepted a new job in the quiet American town of Maple Creek after promising his wife, Rebecca, and their two children, Noah and Emily, that life would finally be different. They all dreamed of peaceful evenings, family dinners, and weekends spent together instead of staring at phone screens and work emails. When they arrived at their beautiful old farmhouse surrounded by golden maple trees, it felt like the fresh start they had been waiting for. The house was old but full of character, with wooden floors that creaked beneath every step, wide windows that filled each room with warm sunlight, and an attic that looked untouched for decades. Everyone smiled, believing they had finally found the home where their family could begin again. For the first few days, everything felt perfect. The children explored every corner of the property while Ethan and Rebecca planned how they would renovate the house together. But as the excitement faded, reality slowly returned. Ethan's new position demanded longer hours than he expected, and Rebecca struggled to keep her own interior design business running from home. Before long, the family dinners became rushed, conversations became shorter, and everyone found themselves living separate lives under the same roof. Noah noticed the change first. Every evening, he waited for his father to come home, but Ethan almost always returned after Noah had gone to bed. Emily became busy making new friends at school, while Rebecca spent hours talking to clients. The promise that had brought them to Maple Creek was quietly slipping away. Feeling lonely, Noah wandered through the attic one rainy afternoon. Hidden beneath dusty blankets and old furniture, he discovered a large wooden trunk secured with a rusted lock that had already broken with age. Inside were neatly stacked journals, faded photographs, handwritten letters tied together with a blue ribbon, and a small leather notebook with the name Daniel Brooks engraved on the cover. Curious, Noah opened the notebook and began reading. Daniel had once owned the farmhouse nearly 50 years earlier. At first, the journal described joyful family picnics, birthdays, fishing trips, and evenings filled with laughter. But as Noah turned each page, the writing slowly changed. Daniel began working longer hours, missing birthdays, forgetting promises, and convincing himself he would make everything right next week. That next week never seemed to arrive. One unfinished letter caught Noah's attention more than anything else. It was addressed simply to my daughter. The letter began with an apology but stopped halfway through, as if Daniel had never found the courage to finish writing it. Noah couldn't stop thinking about those unfinished words. The more he read, the more he realized Daniel's family had fallen apart not because they stopped loving one another, but because they stopped making time for each other. It reminded Noah painfully of his own family. That evening, he tried showing the journals to his parents, hoping they would understand what he was trying to say. Ethan smiled politely, but said he had an early meeting. Rebecca promised to read them later after finishing work. Emily barely looked up from her phone. Noah quietly carried the trunk back upstairs, disappointed that no one had listened. The next afternoon, he returned to the attic alone and continued reading. Tucked inside one journal was an old newspaper clipping mentioning that Daniel's daughter had suddenly left Maple Creek as a young woman and had never returned. Another page contained only a single sentence written in shaky handwriting. "If only I had one more chance to tell her how proud I was." Noah felt a lump in his throat. He realized Daniel had spent years writing letters he never mailed. Suddenly, a folded envelope slipped from between the pages and landed on the wooden floor. Unlike the others, it was sealed. On the front, written in faded ink, were the words, "Please deliver if anyone ever finds this." Noah carefully turned the envelope over, his heart pounding as he stared at the untouched seal, wondering what message had remained hidden for decades, and whether opening it might change not only someone else's life, but his own family's future forever. Promises are not kept by words alone, but by the time, love, and attention we give to the people who matter most. Success may build a career, but only kindness, forgiveness, and family can build a life worth remembering. Sometimes, helping someone heal from the past also teaches us how to protect the people we love in the present. As Noah gently held the sealed envelope in his trembling hands, he realized this wasn't just an old forgotten letter hidden inside a dusty attic. It was someone's final chance to say the words they had carried in their heart for a lifetime. Deep inside, he knew that opening it would uncover a truth buried for decades, a truth powerful enough to change another family's destiny and perhaps save his own before it was too late. Taking a deep breath, he carefully reached for the fragile seal, completely unaware that the secret waiting inside would begin a journey none of them could ever imagine. To be continued in Episode 2. A single forgotten letter cannot change the past, but it can change the hearts of everyone who reads it. Before we continue, here's a small request. If you're enjoying this story, please like, follow, and subscribe to stay connected and never miss a new story. Episode 2. The Last Promise. The next morning, Noah woke up with the sealed envelope still resting on his desk. He couldn't stop thinking about the words written across the front. Please deliver if anyone ever finds this. Instead of opening it himself, he carried it downstairs and placed it in front of his parents. This time, something was different. Ethan looked at his son's face and realized he wasn't simply curious about an old letter. He was asking his family to listen. For the first time in weeks, Ethan closed his laptop without answering another email. Rebecca silenced her phone, and Emily slipped her headphones into her pocket. They sat together around the dining table, just as they had promised when they first moved to Maple Creek. Ethan carefully opened the envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter from Daniel Brooks, the home's former owner. Every line was filled with regret. Daniel admitted that he had spent years believing he was working hard for his family, only to realize too late that what they needed most was his time. He apologized to his daughter for letting pride stand between them and confessed that every birthday, every holiday, and every empty room reminded him of the family he had lost. At the bottom of the page was one final request. If anyone ever found the letter, they should try to find his daughter and tell her that not a single day passed without him loving her. The house suddenly felt quieter than ever. No one spoke for several minutes. Rebecca wiped away tears while Emily stared at the old photographs spread across the table. Noah looked at his father and softly asked, "Can we find her?" Ethan nodded without hesitation. "We'll try." It was the first promise he had made in weeks that sounded different. Not rushed, not distracted, but sincere. The entire family spent the day searching through old documents hidden inside the trunk. They found newspaper clippings, faded addresses, and family photographs that slowly revealed pieces of Daniel's life. Most of the information was decades old, but one postcard mentioned that his daughter, Grace Brooks, had moved to a nearby county after getting married. It wasn't much, but it was enough to begin. Instead of returning to work, Ethan took the afternoon off. Rebecca canceled her appointments, and Emily volunteered to search local records online. Noah organized every clue they discovered. For the first time since moving, the Carters were working together instead of living separate lives. They laughed over old photographs, guessed the stories behind faded pictures, and even shared memories from their own lives that they had forgotten to tell each other. Noah quietly smiled. The family he had hoped for was finally sitting around the same table. After several days of searching, they located a retirement community where an elderly woman named Grace Brooks lived. Unsure whether she would even remember her childhood home, the family drove there together. Grace welcomed them politely, though she seemed confused when Noah mentioned Daniel Brooks. Her expression changed the moment she saw the old family photograph. She gently touched her father's smiling face with trembling fingers and whispered, "I haven't seen this picture in over 50 years." Grace invited them inside. Her living room was filled with family portraits, books, and handmade quilts. She explained that she had left home as a young woman after a painful disagreement with her father. Both of them had been stubborn, convinced the other would eventually apologize. Years passed. Pride became silence, and silence became distance. Before either of them found the courage to reconnect, Daniel passed away. Grace admitted that although she had built a wonderful life with her husband and children, one empty place had always remained in her heart. Ethan quietly handed her the letter. Grace unfolded the fragile pages with shaking hands. As she read, tears rolled down her cheeks. Every sentence carried the apology she had waited a lifetime to hear. Daniel never blamed her. He never stopped loving her. He simply wished he had chosen forgiveness sooner instead of allowing pride to steal years that could never be replaced. When Grace reached the final line, she closed her eyes and smiled through her tears. "He always struggled to say how he felt," she whispered. "But these are exactly the words I needed." She thanked the Carter family for bringing her something more valuable than any inheritance. It wasn't just a letter, it was peace. Grace asked if she could visit her childhood home one last time. The next day, the family welcomed her back to the old farmhouse. She slowly walked through each room, remembering birthdays, family dinners, rainy afternoons, and the sound of laughter that once filled every corner. When she reached the attic, she found the wooden trunk exactly where her father had left it. Inside were the journals, photographs, and treasured keepsakes he had carefully preserved. Grace smiled warmly. He never stopped believing I'd come home one day. Together they packed the memories into new boxes. Grace kept the letters and photographs, but she asked Noah to keep Daniel's journal. "Some stories deserve to be remembered," she said. "Not because they remind us of our mistakes, but because they teach us not to repeat them." Driving home, Ethan realized he had almost become the same kind of father Daniel described in his journals. Not because he lacked love, but because he kept postponing the moments that mattered most. That evening he made a decision. He changed his work schedule, refused unnecessary overtime, and began protecting family time as carefully as he once protected business meetings. Rebecca also reduced her workload, choosing fewer projects so she could truly be present at home. Emily became closer to Noah than ever before, making sure he never felt alone again. Their evenings slowly filled with board games, long conversations, shared meals, and weekend adventures that became memories instead of promises. Months later, Noah climbed into the attic one final time. The room no longer felt forgotten. Sunlight streamed through the small window, illuminating the empty space where the old trunk had once rested. He opened Daniel's journal to the very last page and found one final sentence he hadn't noticed before. "The greatest home is not built with wood and stone. It is built every single day by the people who choose each other." Noah closed the journal with a smile. At last, he understood why his family had found the house. They hadn't simply moved into an old home. They had found a chance to become the family they were always meant to be. The people we love never ask for a perfect life. They ask for our time, our honesty, and our presence. Pride can separate hearts for years, but forgiveness has the power to heal what time alone never could. The greatest gift we can give our family is not success or wealth, but the choice to be there for them before the opportunity is gone forever. As the sun disappeared behind the maple trees, laughter echoed through the farmhouse once again, filling every room with the warmth that had been missing for so many years. The Carter family finally understood that a house becomes a home not because of its walls, but because of the love shared within them. Daniel's final wish had been fulfilled. Grace had found the peace she carried in her heart for decades, and one forgotten letter had changed two families forever. From that day forward, the Carters never allowed busy schedules to become more important than the people sitting beside them, because they had learned that every shared meal, every conversation, and every promise kept becomes a memory that lasts a lifetime. This is the end of the story.